So today we are going to deal with the post-colonialism. Okay, post-colonialism, and as you have a whole literature of post-colonialism is prescribed under your study, under your syllabus. You are already introduced to this area, right? Post-colonial literature, that you have a paper in this semester as such. So I am sure you are already familiar with the idea, concepts, everything. Still, as a literary term, literary movement, as a movement, we have to introduce. I have to introduce this one. So, post-colonialism is a critical analysis of the history, culture, literature, and modes of discourse that are specific to the former colonies of England, Spain, France, and other European imperial powers. This is the first idea I would like to get you. That is, it is a critical post-colonialism, post after colonization as a time period. As you know, tomorrow we are going to celebrate the Independence Day of our nation. So again, we know we have been under colonization and different imperial powers had been there. Not just in the case of India, but different nations, different countries, different geographical areas had been under the threat and the rule of colonization of some imperial powers during different time periods of history. So that was the time period you call colonial period, colonialism. And once the nation gets independence, once the nation is free of their rule and exploitation, you are declared with the freedom, official freedom of a nation, or that your colonial period is declared to be over. So that immediately after, the next moment onwards, we are post-colonial. So that is as usual we told, it's with the hyphenated post-colonialism and post-colonialism as an experience. In both terms we can talk, but post-colonial literatures as such, when you take, it can be taken as an experience. Whoever suffered colonization, they are post-colonial. And even in that case, I told you, to make it more clear, even the time when we referred post-structuralism, post-modernism, then itself I told you post-colonialism. Even America can be termed as a post-colonial nation, because at a time period, even if not very recently, it was also under colonization at a particular time period in the history. But later they got independence and they began to colonize other nations. If not brutal colonial power, or attacking, or weapon mode of attacking, or any other established colonies, even in different other terms, they make their imperial power felt across the globe. Okay, so this is the way post-colonialism becomes important. Even after our declaring independence, we have to think, are we really independent? Are we really out of the shackles of the power of colonization? We have to think all these in connection with the post-colonialism as an area of study. Okay. So here it is the critical analysis. We are critically analyzing the history, culture, literature. Now we have our own culture, literature to talk about. We have Indian literature. We have Indian English literature or Indian literature, different Indian languages having its own literature. That's why we have Malayalam literature, Hindi literature, all these indigenous literature that is there. But at a time period when all our native languages, native culture, native literature, art, everything had been in one way or other under their threat, as well as we were in one way or other hindered from making our own move or our own contributions. So this is about after this colonization. Once again, of course, this time period is declared to be over. Right, 1947 onwards, our nation is declared as independent. So our colonization, the colonization of India is over from that moment onwards. And we are now with our post-colonial identity. All of us are post-colonial. In that regard, each American is a post-colonial, because once their nation was a colony, and now it is after that colonization. But can we ever think about a person an American who brutally kills a black man as having any post-colonial sense, identity, any sense of post-colonialism, or any sense of that kind of but we prefer something from humanitarian ground. And post-colonialism is essentially about this looking back to whatever exploitation we suffered, and no longer that should be allowed. This is the relevance of post-colonialism. Okay, we have suffered a great deal, and now at least we have flag independence. That is to say, at least we are declared with the independence in one way or other, and so we have to think in terms of the time period when we were exploited, and no longer that should be allowed as such. So here it is about analyzing those literature. This is an analysis of history, culture, and even our history, how it was distorted. What do you mean by getting distorted? Distorted means you are presented in one in a very different manner, which is really away from reality. Sometimes we talk about making the god a dog. It's not the proper way of translating, but sometimes we talk. It's a proverb in Malayalam. Saying in Malayalam. So sometimes it is like, you are good for nothing, you are bad, you are cultureless. This is the way these colonial powers established themselves in our country. We were lacking confidence. Even now we have this fascination for English education, English lifestyle, or Western culture, Western lifestyle, Western food culture. Now, from where does this come? This is from our own inferiority complex, which had been instilled in us from the colonial time period itself. Okay, so that actually this some of the list of imperial nations you get here: England, Spain, France. They were the prominent, and other European imperial powers. These are some of the prominent colonial nations who were establishing colonies in other countries, other geographical regions, including East, most likely in East and African hemispheres. Okay, and these studies have focused especially on the third world countries in Africa, Asia, and South America. So where do we place ourselves under Asia? We are in the continent called Asia. How many continents are there in the whole? As a whole, we have 7 continents. Okay, and we are under Asia. India as a nation, India as a country is in it belongs to Asian continent. So here, post-colonial studies sometimes also encompass aspects of British literature in the 18th and 19th centuries, viewed through a perspective that reveals the ways in which the social and economic life represented in that literature was tacitly, what do you mean by tacitly? Quietly or without question, tacitly underwritten by colonial exploitation. I will explain. So this is the idea that I just mentioned. I have just mentioned this idea. That is, it is again not just viewing post-colonial literatures. You do not just get the literature from India or Africa. You can take some other literature, post-colonial, our experience. Sometimes our history is distorted. Indian culture, Indian people, they are cultureless, they are barbarous. These people, these colonial powers had the tendency to make us presented in that way in their literature. So that is why it is told, this is not just, this is British literature also is studied to look, to see how they portray us and how ruthlessly they distort our ways. Are we really cultureless? No. Are we really good for nothing? No. They take Indian intellectuals. They see most, if we were like that, Why did they try to bring English education and to give the posting for Indian people in their major official offices as well as ruling sectors? They knew that Indians were not good for nothing fellows, but they never wanted to admit that. And they always wanted to make us feel that we are inferior, so that we have the fascination for them and we have the kind of obedience. They never wanted us to challenge them. That is the trick they made use when they or they tried to assert Indians or any other post-colonial or any other colonized person to be inferior, good for nothing, cultureless, barbarous. Barbarous means one way or other living in a very animalistic way, barbarous, without having a cultural development or any other sense of humanitarian intellectual development. That's what you call barbarity. So these were the labels they wanted to impose upon every colonial subject, colonized subject, not colonial, colonized. Please note down the term. Colonizer is the one who colonizes a country. If it is between Britisher and an Indian, colonizer, Britisher is the colonizer and Indian is the colonized. What do you mean colonized? It's a passive form. You are colonized by someone else. Okay, you are not doing anything. You are passive and they are giving the role. They are ruling, they are exploiting, they are threatening, and they make us believe that what they tell was the reality about ourselves. So this was the pathetic condition we had to suffer, or we had to face under every colonial rule. Not just Indians, but every other colonized nation had been suffering under these imperial powers. Okay. So next part is the presentation going on. Hope so. An important text in establishing the theory and practice in the field of study was Orientalism. Can you see this? Orientalism, colonial. So Edward Said's one of the major texts available, texts available, writings available in Postcolonial Study. Edward Said. He gives a lot of explanation. It's a very vast study on the agendas of colonization. Orientalism. I will explain the term later. See, Edward Said. He says cultural imperialism imposed its power not by force but by the effective means of disseminating. Can you see this term here? Disseminating. Disseminating means you are distributing the idea. You are in one way or other making the idea available as well as acceptable among a mob or among a group of people. They were not actually in the beginning. You know, these people came as visitors to the country. We never thought that they were having this much agenda of colonizing or taking our rule on our nation. We thought that they were good. And of course, you know, during that time, India or most other Asian nations have been divided, and they were having divided and rule policy. They were establishing this divided and ruling policy only because that was possible because we didn't have an established or single government system. Different provinces, different kingdoms, and these kingdoms were always fighting each other for elaborating their spaces, geographical spaces, areas, wealth. So there was no unity, and it was a very great chance for these people to divide and make some of them available for their own agendas. That is how we see in many of the movies. In Parshi Raja, you know how some people worked as betrayers. What do you mean betraying? You are cheating. You are in one way or other failing your own nation, your own heritage for the sake of some trifle, some silly pleasures. They brought some gifts and all, and some people who were already in some way or other privileged, if you are an established ruler somewhere, not even established, but if you are having some kind of a power and you have some people all around you and you are respected and you feel that nowhere these people will be a threat to me even later. So after what happens, in Parshi Raja and all, the movie, it's a very good portrayal to see these kinds of people who made this colonial establishment easy. Okay, the reason was this, because this Indian or any other divided ruling was based on a division, or many divisions had been there. So this was easy for them to make some people under their friendship level easier. It was easy for them to make them available for their own needs. Okay, and of course, there were obviously a lot of underprivileged sections in India or many other underprivileged nations, underdeveloped nations. Of course, India was an underdeveloped nation that time, and many people had been there without having even basic needs to satisfy or get, and again these people couldn't do anything, couldn't make any resistance. Only the people who were having at least a minimum power could do the resistance, but they didn't. In the beginning they thought that these people were coming just as visitors, and they didn't want to resist them. They showed them all the lands, all the crops and other luxuries of India, and they established their rules here. Not just in India. I'm talking about India because we are familiar with at least from movies, at least from readings. We know what happened here. In other continents like Africa and all, the situation is even bad, even worse. Okay. So this is a cultural imperialism. He talks about that. They come and they came and they imposed their power, not in the beginning, not by force, not at all by force. Okay, but by effective means of disseminating in subjugated colonies a Eurocentric discourse that assumed the normality and preeminence of everything Occidental. See, Eurocentric. What do you mean by the term Eurocentric? Europe as the center. Center is always a term which we attach with the importance. You get more important. You are the center of importance, center of attraction. These terms are there. That's why deconstruction decenters everything. They talk about decentering. No longer such a center is there. No longer such an established or one single important concept is there. So here also they have already succeeded in establishing this Eurocentrism. So we all think that these people with this kind of a very well-dressed manner, suit, coat, different dressing style, living style, food culture, all these are somewhere better, and you were fascinated. Indians were fascinated, and many other underdeveloped nation, the people were fascinated for them, and of course they were able to they were having effective means of disseminating in these subjugated. But by subjugation, you are under subjugation, you are already under their rule and under their control. You are controlled by these people. Okay. So normally, and preeminence of everything Occidental, preeminence. Occidental and Orient. Orient is something related with the Eastern Hemisphere. We talk about India or any other Asian part as Eastern, and these whole colonial or imperial nations to be Westerners. Please don't be confused between these terms, Western and Eastern. If not, it is a very highly specified boundary. Yeah, this is East, this is West. But still, we take that divisions as such, and Occident is a term that refers to anything that is connected with the Western, and Orient is something that is connected in connection with the East. Okay, and its representations of the Orient as an exotic. What is the exotic? EXOTIC, exotic. You can see the term there in the slide. Exotic other, exotic and inferior other. Exotic is a term actually we make use, in a literal sense we make use to talk about something which we do not understand, something mysterious, exotic dancers and all we say. We do not know how beautifully they dance, how the mystery is there, and we are in full respect. But here they make use of their oriental stance clear by saying that these Easterners, these people, these colonized people, these underdeveloped nations and the subjects there, they are inferior, they are exotic, they are mysterious, they are not cultural, they are not cultured. We cannot always assume what they will do the next time. They are animalistic. Their intellectual power is not at all growing. It's not grown, and it's something underdeveloped, and we cannot expect them to be cultured or somewhere intellectual. So this is the way they disseminated. This notion had been instilled in us all as well. Once they begin to, even we have the situation when we have a cultural gathering or familial gathering, we feel like, oh, this is something we always feel like inferior when we see some people doing something in an extraordinary manner. That is possible. Not talking about everyone, but it's possible sometimes at least. Okay, when we are small kids, we feel like others are making everything better. Others are having a voice of their own. We are not able to speak up for ourselves. So this is the way we have an inferiority feel when we are among other people who who express themselves to be better. And the exact thing had been happening in India. That is, under Orientalism, they told that it's culturally we are inferior. They had been giving us this notion, and we couldn't stay away from taking it for granted. For the reason that we didn't have much of an established rule or anyone else to protect us. The small rulers or the simple rulers who were in one way or other, who were busy making themselves somewhere wealthy as well as prominent and prosperous. They didn't have the time or interest to protect the nation, cultural history or the subjects who were under them. Sometimes you used it to call not to Rajyangal, provinces, some very provincial rulers. They didn't have much. Actually, they didn't have the power or weapon or any other power to stay as a threat for these rulers as well. They came up with a different, even guns or many other the technologically developed kind of weapons or many other agendas. But even at least they could try. They could have tried, but they didn't. This the rulers, the small or very provincial rulers of our nations, they didn't try to protect the culture or the national history or anything. They just made themselves available for these colonizers for their own personal growth. Okay, and so this cultural imperialism by means of the control of discourse, not in the Orient but anywhere in the world. Now it's about a discourse, imperialism by means of the control of discourse. That is, what I mean by discourse, you should have a thorough idea about discourse, I tell you. What do I mean by discourse? Discourse. From alphabet you have letter, then word, phrases, sentences, and sentences you have discourse. That is again a very vast, as a very simple level you can say it's a vast body of knowledge. So this discourse they made use, that is Indians are or Asian continent, the people in Eastern Hemisphere, you are good for nothing, you are cultureless. This had been the discourse they were disseminating through their writings, through their elocutions, through their speeches, They were making use of everything possible to make us feel that we are nowhere better than them. We were nowhere better than them. This is the feeling. Even now we have this tendency not to find out something better, not to find out the what you say, value of something inherent or something Indian or something native. We have the tendency even now. That is why we are fascinated with English education. Okay, of course, English as a universal language, all those are there. You can study it, you can be well versed in it, you can be excelling in it, but that should not be at the stake of your mother tongue. But what is happening in our times nowadays? Some people tell that I do not know Malayalam. I have less marks in Malayalam with all pride. Because you think that to know Malayalam or Tamil or Karnataka is something of a matter of it's a matter of pride to see that I do not know this than to assert that I am a Malayali. Of course, I know Malayalam and English well. So this is the way it happens with people even after this much years of declaration of the independence. You have to see the incongruity of this, the insensibility with which we behave. See, to have 2 or 3 languages as something we know this language, we know how to write, speak, and we can understand this language, should be a matter of pride. But we people do the reverse. We never want to go, at least walk along the veranda of a Malayalam medium school or Tamil medium school for the Tamilians, for the Carnatic. So this is the problem with the Indians even now, not just with Indians. Many people, this fascination. It's not just the due respect that, of course, as a universal language, English is must. We cannot always cling on to our mother tongue and say that no, I am a Malayali, I will not speak a word English even once you are in another nation where people know only English. That is not the way. We have to be practical. We have to make ourselves fit in the context when we are professionals, when we are pursuing our education, career, whatever it may be. That is one side. But that should not be at the stake of making ourselves inferior by devaluing our culture, our nation, our language, our food culture, our dressing styles, all those. Okay, so this was happening and they were effectively doing that because we couldn't assert our own identity. That is another point. Once we are not confident in ourselves, it is easy for others to invade, or it is easy for others to make us feel bad, so that it is easy for them to colonize, threaten us, to exploit us. This is happening in daily life, not just under colonization. Okay, so that sometimes you might have come across kids who cry for no reason. Sometimes it's a very silly reason they cry, and some people find it it's a matter of pleasure to hurt them, to get a sadistic pleasure. If the once the child starts reacting back, starts making points of asserting himself or herself, this exploitation, this hurting stops. Okay, and that was actually lacking in our in these colonized nations, because we were holding this inferiority complex under the fascination for colonial rule. Not colonial rule, but colonizers' lifestyle and colonizers' culture. Okay, and the rejection of the master narrative. Next point. Next point, what is it? The rejection of the master narrative. Can you see here? The master narrative. What is the master-slave relationship? It is almost like a master-slave relationship we were having. Could you identify that? Of course, it is not even, it's even, you can watch it from different movies that portray Kalapani movie. In Malayalam we have these movies, and in other languages, if you can follow other languages, many other portrayals. Even nowadays, this is almost coming back with many portrayals. See, Parshi Raja movies, not immediately after independence or after 10 years, but very recently these movies come. And they want to portray the way these people fought. And another movie is coming with the Prithviraj, Right. So this is the way our freedom fighters, our leaders, how they tried to protect or at least save. At least some of them had been there who wanted to challenge them, who wanted to keep the value of our culture intact in midst of some other people who really betrayed the nation for their own personal benefits and you could see. So that recent movie, I think also will portray the life of a freedom fighter. Okay. So it's a very controversial in the context nowadays. Still, we have to take, if those people were fighting for the nation, we have to see that their contribution had been really great. So actually, Parshi Raja movie also, that person is genuine. But there had been people among in his own sector who just betrayed the nation for the sake of their own personal benefits. So this is the master narrative, rejection. So now it is the agenda of post-colonialism. Post-colonialism as a movement, as an area, it is developed. And now onwards, we see what we can do with this post-colonial identity. Rejection of the master narrative. First point. They told that our literature is best. So we told that not just your literature, Indians also will write literature. Indians also will create. We are also creative. So we have Indian English literature, Indian writings, not just in English, in Indian languages as well as in English. That's why Indian English literature, African literature, Afro-American literature. All these once colonized nations, we have literatures, other cultural resources coming out as a challenge to this colonial agendas, that you are inferior, you are impossible to bring something valuable. You cannot write literature, you cannot produce literature. You are good for nothing. This master narrative, this master ideology is getting challenged here, and let's see Western imperialism, narrative of the Western imperialism, in which the colonial other is not only subordinated and marginalized, but in effect deleted as a cultural agency, where we were somewhere deleted. We never had representation. We have never had better representation in their writings. That is why we have to study 19th and 20th century literature, British literature as well. We can trace a lot of ideological portrayals in their writings. That is somewhere, if an Indian character occurs, Indian character is portrayed, it is with all inferiority, all negative characteristics, with a barbarous and cultureless lifestyle. They did it deliberately, so that those people, even Indians, when we read that later or during that time, we feel like, oh, we are good for nothing, we are very bad. So what they write is to be taken for granted, and that is how they established their role here. This is obviously the way they did that. As one thing was dividing and ruling, that is the provincial rulers who didn't have much unity among themselves, they could be easily divided, and it was easy for them to establish their rules and agendas. Yeah. Another method was to make the subjects, whole nation, feel ashamed of themselves. That is, with in their narrative, when we see our own portrayals in that way, we feel bad, and we start following their lifestyle. We start respecting them, and we start devaluing ourselves. See the irony behind this? Yes. And its replacement by a counter narrative, in which now we have counter narrative. You use this term, counter. We counter something. They gave us something, and now we start countering it back. This counter narrative, it is in which the colonial culture fight their way back into a world history written by Europeans. Sometimes we think that history is something rigid. History is fixed. Okay, history, what you take history to be a fixed cultural entity or written entity, because okay, it is about an event that happened, and how it is possible. Is it like you have an edition of one book this year and some controversies come and the writer in the next edition corrects it and gives a forward or gives an afterword that I feel sorry for this and that. No, history, you feel that, or we had been taking this notion for granted that history is fixed. But just see, history also is written by someone who is highly biased actually. In the colonial context, if those people were writing Indian history, we didn't have much history of our own. Who could write? Indians who were in one way or other tampered under their boots, under their colonial threats, their exploitation. We didn't have much to write of our own, so that they began to write about us. They wrote about us in a very authentic manner, so that we felt that this is reality. Was it? No. They portrayed almost all Indians to be cultureless, barbarous, ruthless, animalistic. Was it the same? No. But that was the history they wrote, and later we identified, we come to know that this is not the history of India. We counter that master narrative. See the point here? The master narrative we began to challenge. No longer, this is not our history. We have to reclaim the past, reclaim the history, rethink or re-evaluate the history. How much, how the depth of the exploitation, how much we suffered under you. We will portray it, and that is why even these movies are part of our reclaiming the history. Can you assume that any Britisher, if makes a film of colonialism or colonial exploitation in India, would have done this Kalapani movie, would have done this much portrayal of their cruelties in their movies? No, only an Indian can do that. Only from Indian or African novels or writings it can come. Will they ever agree that we did all these cheap things to these nations? No, they will never do that. They will never prefer to do that, unless and until some other threats come. But still, they will never do that. And only these realities become visible or available to the public or to the next generations or our present generation only through reclaiming of the past. And that is what we do in post-colonialism. The reclaiming or rethinking and reclaiming our past, the distorted past, which we are trying to straighten and we are trying to give a clear picture for this scene. Okay? And the subaltern, another term of importance is subaltern as a term. That was the term they used it to refer to the colonized subjects. It is actually a term that it's from military position. It's a very inferior military rank official. This term is used to refer to a military official of very inferior rank. But they used this term to refer to all Indians. Tata, Birla, Ambani, whoever it may be, if during that time or this time they felt us like, or they wanted to call us by the name subaltern. If you talk about India at the present time, of course it is a mixture. Even now it is a mixture of some privileged and underprivileged as such. You know, all Indians are not enjoying the privileges or independence or anything. We have major section of India still crawling under poverty and suffering under different threats, as well as life threat, as well as many other crises, economic, cultural, professional. Many problems are still there, which are not even addressed. And now we can see even more than imperial powers as well, who are accumulating wealth and who are enjoying all the privileges and powers as well. So post-colonial subject as well is a fluid thing. You cannot always say that. Of course, as an Indian, each and every Indian is a post-colonial. Each and every African is a post-colonial. But can we ever say that all these people are having the same post-colonial experience or same concern for the distorted past? They never even care. I have my bungalow, I have my bank account, I have my wealth accumulated, so that why should I care about this British rules, this reclaiming of the past, whatever. Some historians may be in the back of that, some historians may be behind that, some other intellectuals may be behind this. Others are not concerned. Some other people who want to do this, they are underprivileged as well. So post-colonial identity is not something fixed. You cannot say that this post-colonial feeling is the same for all those nations, all those subjects in a nation which was previously colonized. Okay, so I think you get that idea. So the subaltern has become a standard way to designate the colonial subject that has been constructed by European discourse. What is this construction? You are good for nothing, you are barbarous. These terms are, of course, I am repeating the term because these are given in the text as such. It is the way they used it to tell about us. Not as out of my construction I am telling. These were the terms they made to describe Indians or any other colonized persons, colonized subjects. And internalized by colonial people, that was the exact problem I told you. Inferiority of ours, or the fascination for their culture, that made us internalize this discourse, that discourse disseminated by them, that discourse readily available to us. We used it to internalize. Oh, they tell that we are like this, so we have to. They tell that we are cultureless, we are good for nothing, so let it seems so. They are with those coat, suit, everything. They are well dressed, they are well cultured, they can speak English more than everything. They can speak that kind of a language. So this fascination actually made it very easy for them. Our fascination for their ways made it really easy for them too. Okay, so remember this discourse, this under, other, sub, under, other, alter, other. This is the way subaltern becomes a term, and a sub, under, other, othering. You know the term, a subject and the other. Another main thing you have to note down, subject. Of course, you know, whenever we study a sentence, it is subject. Always we refer subject. And object is something of at an invalid point. If the subject does something, if the subject does something, only then object becomes at least relevant, or at least under discussion, comes under discussion. So this is the way subject and object. Subject is something enthusiastic, capable of doing something, this or that, and here we have subject and the other. Here other as a term which is subject, object or other. This is like objectification. You are lifeless, you cannot, you are just alive, almost like vegetation. These Indians or Africans, you are not something valuable as human. Your existence doesn't matter. This is the way they used it to get the idea. Okay, a major element of the post-colonial agenda is to de-establish Eurocentric norms of literary and artistic values. Now we are doing this. Major agenda of post-colonialism. Please note down, not colonization or colonialism, but post-colonialism is to disestablish Eurocentric norms. If they told us to be inferior and good for nothing, we will challenge, we will prove ourselves to be worthy, we will prove ourselves to be some people to be appreciated as well as taken for to be valued and respected. So this is the way we produce literature. We make ourselves creative, and we prove ourselves in different other sectors like science, technology, many other professional fields. We make ourselves visible with the our new move after independence. Now we are free to pursue our education, to make ourselves established in some professional sectors. So some people opt for this, some people do not opt for that. It's a matter of choice. But at least under colonization we couldn't do anything, Okay. Alright, see, this literary canon to include colonial and post-colonial writers. So this is the way. And again, they didn't see this post-colonial experience, this post-colonial method didn't want to explore anything. Of course, colonial writings also is to be tested and studied. Only then we will understand how easily what their agendas had been to make us feel inferior, or how distorted images are portrayed for the Indian characters once they portray some of us in novels. And that is the way they did during colonization. This is again, these writings and novels or any other historical records are in one way or other the reflection of the rules or historical events that happened in one country. Okay, so of course that's all that actually this post-colonialism is again the kind of movement that gives importance to this the writings, or in one way or the literature, culture and other cultural artifacts. With the respect to that we check out what had been happening. Okay, so we could not curtail, we could not limit our studies in just some Indian writings or some Indian languages, but we have to study them as well, their writings as well. Only then we can find out how much racism is there in them, how much distortions had been happening in their portrayals, in their writings. So this is how we make ourselves visible, we make our voice heard, so that no longer this exploitation becomes possible, or no longer this exploitation is allowed as such. Okay, so this is the way post-colonialism, the discussion. I am here. Thank you.